midway through the deal in this, seventh turn here. But I felt like talking. So I'm going to come on with the, hey, what's happened so far? So over the course of the game, Balboa's been exploring this area, Pizarro cutting down here. He didn't have a lot of luck up here where he was first expected to discover any kind of empire. He has just discovered the last of the potential empires. There will be no more in the game. Cordoba, who is a replacement for Cortez, who died, is exploring and exploiting an empire here. Balboa is exploiting his empire. This is sort of the most interesting area. So Alvarado came in this direction, found an empire, but he had passed it by. That's kind of cool, actually. And went in to deal with and try to take advantage of an empire that Almagro found over here. They ended up sparring a little bit with each other. There's an arrest warrant on Almagro. His force is very weak. He has no opportunities to improve it, really, of any significance. He could conceivably get additional infantry units. He might be able to get defectors if he's fighting in a battle and has the right cards. Alvarado is in better shape, but as you can see, he also must have lost a leader because he's got a replacement with him. Actually, I don't think Almagro. No, Almagro is the original. Yeah. Alvarado is the one who lost a leader, and I don't know who. I could dig through there and figure it out. We've had an exploration by Candia up into Florida to discover the Mississippi River. And now all the legends and whatnot are sitting over here. So all the sort of loose conquistadors, who are really more explorers by intention here at this point, have moved over here. Now it would be possible, so for example, if this guy didn't have a big enough force, he could have Candia come and join him. But the people who have an excess conquistador available are not suffering any kind of real depletion of their forces. Although Balboa could actually use this cannon here. And if Coronado comes and joins him briefly and exchanges it, that would work. For the most part, the game favors playing one expedition at a time. So having a couple of on the board isn't really a huge advantage, and consolidating your forces is. However, an excess one can go off and do a discovery like Candia did over with the Mississippi in Florida. In terms of exploitation of the empires, all the players except Pizarro have been doing some work on that. We have some victory points calculated out. 90-something for blue. The reason he's so high is he's the one who found and explored the Mississippi. That's an extra 60 points, so he's actually not in the lead in gold extraction. And then the other two that are impressive here are Almagro and Alvarado? No, and Balboa, who are in the 50s. Alvarado, as you can see, went a long ways before he found anything. Pizarro has gone an even longer way before finding anything. That's sort of the main luck factor in the game. If you don't find an empire, you're not going to extract as much gold. But, you know, I may have put too much emphasis on that, right? It might have made sense for Pizarro, for example, to start looting cities on his way and be incredibly violent. The problem is it feels like, you know, I don't know. That's just sort of I guess I did it wrong. Combat. So combat against the natives, the Spaniards are pretty likely to win. So they're, and get out of it without much damage. So if they just attack a city and plunder it, that may be a better path to victory. I think trying to go for that first imperial city is important, but once that's been discovered, I think everybody should go in full plunder mode to probably enhance their prospects of winning the game. At this point, the game probably should be over if people had been doing that. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because the first one found was Almagro, I think, found his first, or maybe Balboa, and they don't have that many points. And the thing is, when we're looking at full plunder mode that people are in, they have assets available, they have maybe an allied city that they can rely on, and stuff like that. So maybe just going completely like berserk Viking all over Central and South America is not the best idea. But I do think that I took to plundering too late, comparatively. All right. Time for me to discard the 2 cards from each player, and then I'm done for a little bit. So I won't be back, I hope. I always lie, though. But now I said I lie, so I maybe won't be. One thing I forgot that almost impels me to come back is the random events. I made a roll. Legend moves. Choose 1 legend on the map randomly. There are, I think, no rules for that. 19.22. Let me look. How they say to choose one randomly. Now, the obvious way, and I think it doesn't matter because I want to look it up, but the obvious way is to just roll amongst the ones that are on the boards. But is it map dependent? That's the question. Now, it doesn't matter because there's nothing over on this map, but do you check for map first the way you do when you're assigning legends? Which I actually think is kind of shitty. I think a better solution than check for map first, then roll a number, is actually check for map, roll a number, and go back if you hit one, so that everything wouldn't cluster on one map as easily. But it's probably not that big a deal. We've only had 1 found. When move legend, choose 1 legend marker from those in play. Yeah, it just says both maps included, so I think you would do them all. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so the 7 cities of Cibola is going to move. And now we check which map it's on. It's going to be over there. And this is automatically a success. It slides over to space number 3, all the way over here. Now this is kind of interesting because somebody, I think, threw Prester John away because they moved their guy down here for exploration of the, searching for the legends, because it would be so hard to get back over here comparatively. Well, one of the close ones just ran away. Our first impulse, everything comes out. It's the blue player. He's in the lead of the game. He decides, they're going to hold shit against me anyway. I might as well take, I'm all set up and everything. I'm as good as I can be. So he moves into this city to attack. And oh boy, does a whole bunch of kind of like one in the deck stuff come out. All anti-horse, actually. The pits, the Spanish subtract 1 from the combat in the first round of combat because they have horses. Cut saddle straps puts 1 horse in kind of reserve. If any unit gets killed, that will get killed as well. No, if all other units are killed, that will get killed. But otherwise, they're behind. And the total value of horses is halved, and they lose the option of an attack prior to combat. Ouch. So I'll come back with just the results. You guys have seen the combat happening, and I'm never sure. There's people who do like these complete playthroughs that are like every little action and everything. And I don't really feel like you get any better grip of the narrative through that. All you get to, I like to do it to show off the system, but I've been doing it too much in this playthrough, and probably in many. Problems is, even with this massive amount of cards and a big force, it's just not enough to take on the huge force that Cordoba has. Now, if it were actually limited to 10 units, including Indians, and again, it would be a much, much smaller force and be able to be dealt with. The only casualty he suffered, he took 2 rounds, 2 casualties, but one was a big Indian 20 unit that got knocked out of the way. And then these guys go here, and the strategy card discard can be exposed now. And that's the extent, unless I want to play a card and move Candia. And I really kind of don't right away, maybe a little later. Pretty easy. Okay, yeah. Balboa moves into the capital here to start pillaging it again. And Alvarado rallies some of his troops, but he has 2 interesting cards. He's playing these against Cordoba. First, an assassination attempt. It wouldn't do much because he's got a Mano de Dios sitting right out. That's in the open. But clearing that out of the way, might be necessary as a form of wiping his situation out. It would have been easier to kill the king. The king impacts like pillage rolls and such not. But then I played City Has New Chief. Now, that's not the king. That's this city here that was an allied city. I took that away, so now he's no longer getting free food there. But more importantly, although a little too late, all his Indian allies abandoned him, even though he still has an allied city. I realized I forgot, since I wasn't doing it on camera, you couldn't know, but I forgot to make a casualty check on this. It ended up being a wound from the battle. And let's see, I did... Did I discuss what he did? I think I did. So I moved on to Pizarro. Pizarro tried a diplomacy, fucked it up, got a bad die roll. Nobody's trying to hurt him. He's not doing very well. He laid a little bit of hurt out, or tried to, and improved his governorship. Actually, no, somebody did throw hurt out, because this guy is obviously pillaging. And although Pizarro may not be the best of the options, maybe Almagro would be a better option if he does diplomacy. Everybody else is pillaging. There's a fair chance that, this is my only chance to get Pizarro with it. So I'm like, well, I don't know if this guy's going to or not, whatever. Anyway, but it canceled out a card that Pizarro played. So, and troops were raised. Nobody threw anything against him for that. And he ended up defeating them handily with his initial charge. It was a pretty crappy setup. But that means that now I have a king, which will help my pillaging. Magro played a couple of things interfering with the governorship, I thought. The suspicion of treason there. He's got an arrest warrant in his hand, but he doesn't really know. It might be best just to slap it on blue, but whatever. It doesn't really affect. I can't put it blue under arrest, but I could reduce his index by another one. But the arrest warrant gives me something that I could use elsewhere. The problem is nobody's near him. He's got a fairly big force, bigger than either Alvarado and certainly Almagro. So I don't know who the hell can do anything about him unless he gets weakened by like Indian uprisings or something. I did a diplomacy which nobody played against. I actually have a handful of cards to play against diplomacies. That may, I don't know. He got his food and an asset instead of a gold. Got myself an interpreter out of that. It'd be kind of nice, to some extent. I don't know. I don't mind the randomness of drawing the assets, but it would be kind of neat if you could, I don't know. I'm trying to add layers of complexity onto things, I guess, where I'm thinking, well, you collect up points and you buy things with native goodwill or something. Again, probably thoughts from, the kind of game that I was trying to design, as opposed to this, which just feels like it's missing something. I don't know. Anyway, that'll put me to Impulse 2, and I'm moving very slowly again. Yeah. Just would rather, fuck around on the computer than anything else, pretty much. Even if I'm not able, even if I'm not playing my stupid not League of Legends, Shadow Raid Legends. One of the reasons I started playing it was I was just spending my time watching YouTube videos and stuff. First player, second impulse. Messy again. This is again the lead player. Last time, I feel like I probably got distracted because I had two cards I should have probably played. One was an Intrigues at Court, which gave me an index point. I could have actually taken away from somebody else instead, but I want to protect my own position. I'm the obvious bunny here. And then a Free the King that I played against Balboa, giving him a big pile of problems to deal with at his, I don't know, that must be the Imperial capital, right? Yeah, that he's ready to loot. Well, now it's not going to be easy to loot. In my own plunder attempt, I got 12 gold because people played a bunch of nastiness on me, but it didn't deplete, which is kind of the important thing. And, DeSoto is not the combat-oriented or diplomacy that Almagro has. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. No, Cieza is a really shitty leader. He's a replacement. So, but for plundering, I can do that just fine without, my best leader who's wounded right now. Again, we see the conflict, right? Between, or where this game has chosen within that conflict between sort of balancing play. In this case, the cards provide a tremendous catch-up mechanism because everybody's going to lavish all their bad stuff on the guy who's in the lead to keep him from winning, to give them enough time to kind of catch up. Again, that's more of a modern style of design to take into concern because, and I get it, I've played with people and I've been in situations and not liked where someone is so far behind that it's just why am I even playing? Especially in a game like this where you're not really influencing other people, assuming the cards weren't in it. Take a game like Source of the Nile or whatever. Things are going horribly. It all depends on what your attitude is. So some of the best times I've had in these kind of narrative-based games, which I feel like this belongs in, even though the cards defeat that purpose, have been when people get a really bad string of horrible luck, right? Even if it's me that's that people, it's just funny. And people who take it well enjoy, this bad string of luck happening. It's, to me, a big part of the fun in Tales of the Arabian Nights, as an example. And, so from my particular standpoint, the idea of trying to create a catch-up mechanism or, some kind of, the more interactive play is a different issue, but trying to create a catch-up mechanism is definitely not worth the expense in a narrative style game. And I feel like that's where this is playing or belongs in, but it's not. The designer has instead chosen, to make a competitive game with the theme of, this particular era and region. There's Balboa. He has a reasonable sized force. He has a combat card which could be helpful, a betrayal. There's a big unit within that stack that I can take out of the combat. I think I'm going to go ahead and launch an attack on that space. And I think if you try to perform plunder on a non-hostile city and generate the troops, the way the rules are written is actually the best way to handle it, is the correct way to handle that. Because here I don't have the option to plunder because there's no troops there, because there's troops there. So I must take a combat action to clear the space of the troops, which means I would be gaining an advantage by plundering an unsuspecting city. Now, I can kind of understand that argument, but it does seem like, too much of an advantage. If you have to fight, you have to fight. All right, I'm gonna go for the fight because I need to catch up, and this is the capital, which gives me some benefits in terms of the gold that I can get. I want to get the king back, just all kinds of things. However, this guy at the very least is probably going to play some shade on me, if he has any. And other people may be willing to as well, simply because, hey, where's the battle going to happen? Well, there's a possibility here, but we're talking about somebody who's in that sort of second place range. So other people have their reasons for giving him some nastiness. That was a success. Now, Balboa has a not great combat skill, but everything else is good. So I'm using Ordis as my military leader. The betrayal got me a big extra unit. I got the king back, but I did lose a cav unit. Remember, there's basically no way to regain your lost units, except like Coronado could come join us. And that cost me an index point. Guess that's Alvarado. Moved out of that plundered city. I need to get food, stuff like that. So I'm gonna take some time and prepare before launching any attack into there. And if I get an allied city there, that would be really, really helpful, because that would allow me access, without, say, expending food to the attack and whatnot. I think I have enough forces to take it. It seems pretty easy to defeat even large forces. Going over to Pizarro, he had a couple of cards he played. He grabbed a theft, grabbed a couple of gold, played an Indian uprising to build troops here. Didn't use the Indians. I want to plunder. So I put a plunder marker and got another 15 gold from that. Nice, nice resources. Nobody wants to screw with him. And what that means is he's not going to face any problems. Those Indians are not going to become an issue with him from anything he does. And again, this is where the cards bother me. Yes, he could still screw up and deplete it and get little gold or something because of bad die rolls. But what he can't do is there are certain elements of the game that are only triggered by the cards. Maybe some tweaking with the cards and adding more tables would, resolve my concern with that. Like, I just really don't like the idea that Pizarro will not face an Indian attack in that city that he's looting. He will be able to loot it until he loots it dry, essentially. Or whatever, He can do whatever he likes while he's there, though. The other side of that, wow, seriously? 2 4s right next to each other? That's weird. But the other side of that kind of tweaking is what that means is you would be supporting the entirety of, complex table-based game. And this game is already very far into that realm of lots and lots of random tables to consult to do stuff. But you'd be adding even more that are being, completely covered by the cards instead of like, but these tables could be made more complex. When I say complex table-based, I just mean actually more, there's such a large quantity of tables. You could make tables more complex and combine multiple things in them. So for example, the plunder gold, exhaustion, and or an attack could all be worked into the same table. But yeah, as it is, there is nothing Pizarro can do to piss off these people anymore. Because he's behind in victory points. He has none. And none of the other players are going to hit him. Just for that. Yeah. Almagro takes his turn to move into that space. I have food. I don't have a huge force. I'm probably going to do diplomacy. I dropped an arrest warrant on Alvarado. It doesn't do that much because I'm not big enough to screw with him, but if somebody else wants to, fine. Otherwise, I could have just dropped somebody's index, but I'm still pissed at him for driving me away and, putting me in a position where I don't have enough troops to really be likely to win the game anymore because plunder's going to be harder for me. All I have is some infantry. That ends the impulse, and it's not supposed to rain for a few hours, so I'm like, oh, I should go shopping. I just fucking can't do it, man. I see myself, I don't know. It's like I can't leave the house, and I know it's going to rain other day, the rest for until Sunday at least, but I also am like, Jesus, maybe it's time to just stop eating. Another impulse quickly. It hasn't rained, and I could have been back from shopping by now easily. But now it's clearly going to, I think. I don't know. There was a period where it was kind of sunny. It looks the same as it did in the morning, but I should have at least gone to the more local store and grabbed a couple of things, but I just don't have any will for it. So I tried to run through an impulse relatively quickly. I fucked up my blue-green issue. I thought this was green and this blue. They're not. And did the wrong order. But let me cut it as though it were in the right order. Cleared out the enemies there. Really wasn't that hard, even with Decieza here. And let's see. From that, Yeller, Balboa, I guess plundered, I don't know. This is the problem. Like, it all just feels like people did stuff and collected gold, and it's like, in an 18xx game, after you get past the interesting part of the game and you say, well, everybody made their runs, I could tell you the numbers if I pay enough attention or write them down or something. But otherwise, it's just stuff happened, and that's not very interesting. Which is kind of why I want to end. Now, you could make that same argument with XX. Well, why do you play out whole games of that? Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know. And I'll play this out too. I love XX, but I don't really have a good answer. Over here, Alvarado did a diplomacy action and got himself some food. He was hoping to get himself an allied city. He's got to make his decision and go in and do something about that. That puts me next to Red. Pizarro did a plunder. Got a decent amount of gold, actually, off of that. That's his second plunder in that space. At some point or another, you have to make a decision. Yeah, I don't want to keep making rolls on that. He'd be fine with the turn ending because that would reset the clock. And I'm the only person sitting there with 2 plunders. And then to green but actually blue, no, to blue but actually green, right? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I can't tell their difference. I've got to really lean in to be able to see the difference. I just have blue. That is not the counters, that's me. I mean, yes, the colors are a little too close. I have no problem seeing the difference here with that tan background, but you put too much busyness in it, and there's sort of a yellowishness to the borders around these. That just makes it worse somehow. Just like something else with the tan made it worse. So I don't know. Surrounding colors, it's something I don't understand well enough to be able to argue. So I actually did blue, but I haven't talked about green, so that's Almagro, who went in and did, who was in here and did a diplomacy as well. You see, he got a gold roll. He got almost nothing, a couple bucks. And we roll for the end of turn roll. And I don't know which way I want this to go, I mean, I just want the game to end, right? I want it to get to its conclusion. It's not that I hate it, but I really don't like videoing it at this point, and I probably shouldn't, because when I'm not enjoying it. But the only way I can fucking convince myself to come up here and do any is that. Now, I tried playing straight through, thinking that would work better rather than all the little stops explaining what happens. And all that happens is I forget. Throughout the game, I've been kind of thinking, hey, 1 expedition is what you want. But once you have a situation like this, and even though I have a replacement Conquistador assigned to that same team, I have, I think it's fairly common to have 2 Conquistadors in a single team. If you look at all my setups, every single player has at least one group that has 2 Conquistadors, even if they didn't start that way. But the fact is that I have such a crappy one left alive, and another one who's wounded, means that at this point in the turn, I think I'm going to play my dual card. I can still do another looting with these guys without too much damage, but I'm not going to want to do anything beyond that second loot, or plunder or whatever, because I don't want to lose, I don't want to plunder the city out. Now, there is still another city, but I haven't gotten to it yet, Imperial City, that I can get to. And the thing is, after this round, unless something terrible happens, on any other rounds this turn, I want Candia to go. So I have a double move. I'm going to start him on his way down that way. Another thing that I want to note, I've noted, hey, people who aren't in the lead aren't going to get any bad stuff directed at them. But by the time you get this far in a turn, and it's fairly likely it gets that far, bad stuff stop happening because everybody wants to play their bad stuff cards and get them out of their hands so that they, get more cards next turn, whatever, get a refresh. You don't want to be holding something at the end of the turn if you could have used it, because you'd rather recycle things, unless it's a really, really important card and you would have used it for something kind of crappy. But yeah, so I look at all the cards and nobody can do anything to them for plundering, even though, so the chances of bad luck, the later in a turn, are less and less because you're relying on these players' hands as opposed to, again, an even distribution of luck. It's safer to launch a battle late in the turn. And you can say, is this good, is this bad, whatever. The same kind of influences affect, but I think to a much lesser extent, the game Geronimo, which I keep bringing up in context of this, but I feel like the card play in this has some similarities to that game. In Geronimo, quite often your opportunity to play your cards is often less available. So you have to wait for somebody to do something specific and whatever. Often it's, yeah, you want to, but the flow of the game does have some of this, hey, the later in the hand of cards that you go, the flavor sort of switches, which is just to say, you might not want to trigger certain of your native tribes because they're at risk. So you wait longer until the threats have sort of declared where they're going. There's still a danger that someone else will, fire off something big next to you after you do something. Anyway, in this case, Alvarado is launching an attack on this city to try to get the king, and the numbers are not bad, so it's kind of appealing anyhow, rather than going to this hostile city to set up just for looting. In either case, I would have really liked this to be an allied city, and it's not. During the narrative here, both Cordoba and Balboa did looting. I forgot to flip over Balboa's counter. Did I forget Cordoba's? Yeah. To the 2 side. Balboa is not next to an allied city either, obviously. He's created some hostility around him. But both of them got good money. And I take a look at, say, what Balboa has, 70, 90 bucks. If he could translate that entirely over, that would get him to about the 140 level. Obviously, 20% of that goes away. So we're looking more at like 70 bucks. But I think we're in a position where it's quite possible the next turn will be the last one. If I look over here, he's collected up a little bit less, 34, but he's in the lead. So, we're looking close to the same range. But Balboa is actually in the lead if he converted those points. Now, debt-wise, the white player, who is not Balboa, I think that's Alvarado, has a significant amount of debt, but neither of the 2 players that are really in contention that I see, and it's the 2 I mentioned, who went first this turn, have any noticeable debt. It's kind of hard to tell. Again, the tracks, I wish they were divided up better than just, hey, here's a general records track for you, and let's give you 2 of them. 2 of them is better than 1 because now I've segmented the victory points into 1 and the money points into the other. The victory points are more important to keep a track on. Okay, Alvarado's attack did not go well. Explain what happened. He lost a cav. Here, it was a matter of, we've seen bigger forces able to be handled easily. The problem there was so many little counters that eventually, that it meant the combat had to go more than just 1 round. Well, the quantity of counters was large enough that I had to go multiple rounds. There were some misses in some of those rounds because the numbers were not very high for the Indians, but the chances of getting 2 hits against me were high enough that I actually took a hit. Governor's Index is down at the bottom now. And perhaps even worse, Alvarado's dead. Now, because this expedition has someone in it, still, Narvaez is the sole conquistador, which means any kind of distribution of money is now improved. But given that he has a combat of 1 and nothing else, this is not a good result. And my arrest warrant goes away because I lost a conquistador, which is the factor affecting that. Tomorrow had a lost plate against him because nobody's doing any exploration. He jumped down here in order to try to get himself someplace he can trade with. He's got food, but he doesn't want to tap the plundering out, although he's got multiple cities that he could cope with if he did. May not have been a great idea, but he found a town. And, the complexity of counting all the different things, well, it became pretty obvious that this stretch was what was going to contain the longest one, and it's going to be this one here. But it's mechanically an annoying little thing to do. And now, again, I've got to explore again. I can't just run back up up the spine the way I did. I don't know the way anymore. I lost my maps or something because of this. I don't know. Bro, and this may wipe him out, is taking a risk here. First of all, he threw an Indian uprising, brought it up against Cordoba again. I rolled a die to see if he was even aware of Balboa. He chose not to launch the issue against Neves, who really is the one who fucked him over. But I don't know. I don't think it was. He chased him around and attacked him a couple of times and put him in a position where all he's got is foot soldiers. So he might have wanted to do a spite move there, but instead he went after the leader on that board instead of trying to account for this. But I probably should have considered whether he wanted to go after Neves. Just fuck that player, you know, because Neves doesn't really have a chance either. Actually, I'm in better shape than he is. And if I can get away with wiping out the small amount of forces that showed up, I actually am still in the running, kinda. And diplomacy isn't going to get me the kind of gold that I need. However, I drew a big 40. That's not going to be particularly good. And I don't have a lot of troops. So I'm looking at the 8. I've got a +2 combat here. And nobody's got any cards to do anything. I only get an 8 on them. That's just a morale check. That doesn't help. Whereas they're going to be on the 60 table, which is going to start hurting me. And I am probably in trouble. Come back again on the 8 table. I really needed to get a hit and weaken that force. This time I get an 8. Again, a morale check, no effect. I'm on the 60 table again, where an 8 is done. That's 2 hits. That's going to flip one and kill that one. So I am green. I'm weakened further. Basically, I feel like I have no chance of winning without taking this risk. Now, this is where the very common question that I bring to every game comes in, which is, am I playing to come in first or to place? You know? And the more abstracted a game is, and I feel like this one is fairly high, I put it up there, not quite with hearts, but with most Euros, you know, is, you know what, if I can win, I'm going to go for it. If I have any chance of winning, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take it more towards the binary end of things than anything else. Whereas if I was playing, I don't know, a war game, I would take into account what kind of position in the world that nation is put into. If I'm playing Republic of Rome, I look at it as, well, very clearly, I don't want Rome to fall. That's pretty close to the worst thing that can happen. Although, if I am in horrible shape, then maybe I'm willing, you know, to take a brief stab, or maybe I'm willing to let Rome collapse because I'm like, well, maybe the barbarians will be good to me, or things won't be any worse than they are. But if I'm in like an 18xx game, I very much look at it as, you know what, coming in second is almost as good as coming in first. I'm in an economic game that has some sort of solid rooting. Now, like I said, in this one, I feel like with all this kind of competitive card play and everything, I'm playing more like a game of hearts than I am, or I'm playing more like a Euro, in which I just don't feel all that associated with the actual outcomes as they were. Now, compare that to the 2 games that I look at for this. Geronimo, very, very close to my feelings on this. Very close to my feelings on this. Because in Geronimo, you're not actually playing one thing. You're switching sides all over the place. And your point score is really the only thing in the game. So it feels disassociated from anything that I'm trying to build as an empire or anything like that. It just becomes almost completely a pure point point raise. But if I look at Source of the Nile, first of all, there's not much I can do to make a stab for victory. I might take riskier moves because I'm falling behind, which is similar in intention, but it's more a matter of, Jesus, I'm a fucking nobody, I haven't found anything. Well, that's it. I'm doing this. I'm gonna go off on my own and cut across Africa or whatever. So, I feel grounded, but actually the in-game decision is very similar because I can tie the score very well to the kind of actions that achieve the same kind of, well, I don't want to just be some doinkerhead who, is a footnote in history. I want to be important. If the real person thinks that, I don't know. And did I just lose myself somewhere? I think I've completed 2 rounds of combat. I have to make a decision. Do I want to keep fighting? Because I'm getting nowhere. So I am going to retreat. Now that gives me an automatic morale hit, which sucks. But here, I'm actually taking, it's still physically possible that maybe I could win. Maybe I could come out of this all right. Because I'm on the 60 table on a 2, it's just a morale hit. But the chances are too low. So the balance of the equation as to, I've turned this hostile to all Spaniards now. The balance of the equation as to whether or not, preserving my dude is worth this almost astronomically bad risk. I'm still tied enough to the idea that I am this person, that I'm not simply worried about my point score, I'm not simply worried about, it's not even my point score, I'm not simply worried about the binary win versus don't win. Let's take a look at Geronimo on that concept. In Geronimo, I will wipe out my tribe, or I will wipe out a column based entirely on the point score situation. It becomes a matter of, well, how do you gain points and how do you not? And in that game, wiping out your own things doesn't really cost you anything because they're not really yours. You get to use them one turn. And you may actually be setting things up so someone else is screwed, so you just don't know. So there the points become everything. Really terrible situation where you have this kind of maybe a chance of something glorious happening, but you're in really horrible situation in a game of Source. I don't know. Usually you don't have choices like this. Usually you take it to combat, it goes to combat, and it's a single roll. So I wouldn't put it that way. I do have to make a leader loss check, and I used my big guy Alvarado there, and he's fine. Fine as you can call him for being in a very, very sad situation. That's going to put me to a check on 2 to 5. Turn moves forward. And probably going to switch pipes, switch batteries, and keep playing. Because something in my spirit says, just push through this, man. The shit that I'm doing that, kind of has been keeping me from playing this. Some of it's been my video game, but a lot of it's been just fucking around, and I'm sick and tired of fucking around, and I want to get this done and get the next game on the table. Which has played kind of badly towards me just playing through large portions of this game, is actually what's coming up next, which is this whole kind of mechanical aspect of, hey, I gotta look at my cards, figure out what I want to discard, pull a new hand of 10, look at those, figure out what I want to discard. I got to get rid of 2 of them, and then the complexity, of course, of big hands, of interactive cards, which always is problematic as well. But, you know, adding to sort of the, although this isn't the CDG, it feels kind of like it because, well, maybe not. You don't need cards to do things. But you have such big hands, you have so many choices, and there's so much going on, and it's highly interactive, kind of like something I was playing recently. I've got to pile up. I got to start sorting things. What was I doing recently? This Time of Wars had a lot of interactive cards involved in it. So it made it harder to play solo. I also contend that it makes it harder, at least for me, to play these things opposed. But in this case, the whole strategy card part of it would be fine opposed, but playing that solo, going through each hand doing that, it is a heavy burden, and it is one of the things that's slowing me down. Full solo system, if I were to play that, although that holds no interest to me. I like playing multiplayer games solo, not solo design games. I like playing solo design games. I like playing multiplayer solos of the other type, which is to say something like Tales of the Arabian Nights or Source of the Nile, where basically there's almost no interaction between the players. It's entirely narrative, but you're all sitting there enjoying each other's misfortunes and, you know, to some extent, their successes that are exciting. It's for the same reasons. It's fun to share narrative games with other players, right? In a way that I find competitive games, I don't mind, I take a certain enjoyment in playing very competitive games with other players. There's no question about that. You know, I love playing XX opposed. I love playing a number of things opposed that are definitely competitive in nature. And I think I'd enjoy this opposed. But in the same way that I enjoy, you know, but it's not the best way to analyze competitive games. And I consider this a competitive game in that sense. So I kind of enjoy the analysis side of it. A lot of the narrative-based games, and the next one we're doing is probably going to be a narrative-based game, from what I can tell. Feel cold, you know. It's like, okay, you know, I could be playing this straight solo, or I could be playing multiple players solo. Although I know that there's some competition in that other game, so I definitely am kind of intrigued by it. Okay, still got to get back to those cards. Trying to avoid them by blathering onward. I'm looking at these, and I work completely one player at a time when the deck is full, and hope that my shuffling is good. Got this Free the King card. I think I may have misplayed it. It says, may be used against any town or city space which contains a captured king. The town or city immediately becomes hostile and generates double the number of the usual Indians. Gun for the King's freed. I've been taking Free the King to mean that the king actually gets freed. I don't think it's that. I think it's an attempt to free the king. And this is something the Aztecs definitely did. It's a little harder to say. Yeah, I don't remember my Incas well enough. Where they rose up to try and free the king, but didn't really mind if he got killed. It's kind of the issue. So yeah, I maybe shouldn't be pulling the king out, and I think I've done that in a couple of cases. Oops. Slowly gotten less excited about Painted Warriors, and I'm throwing one of them out. They double all the Indian combat units. That sounds great, but so often the Indians are up above 60 anyway in city fights that, yeah, screw it, man. It's just not that worthwhile. It's for all rounds, which is somewhat helpful, but yeah. What the fuck am I doing, dude? The turn didn't end. So I'm gonna have to unwind things. Oops. I think what happened was going downstairs in between impulses to get my pipe and whatnot. I didn't really do anything, but I thought about this between the turns thing, and that convinced me when I came up that I'm on a new turn. But I'm obviously not. I haven't done feeding or anything like that. So, on with another impulse. The idea is relatively close, comes in on the shore. You can't go third space and explore. You can only go 3 spaces if it's all through explored territory, which is really a problem with these removals, you know, this breakup here, but whatever. Almagro's choices are badly beaten up. He's got a decent amount of points over here built up, but I just can't compete on the pillaging side of things. Diplomacy is no longer an option there because I pissed them off. So I'm going to go try to find the Mississippi, I think. But that's not trivial either, because I'm so deep in up to here. What it means is, and I'm going to have to look up how rainforests and deserts work. I have a couple of choices. I can try to explore my way to the coast here, but although this stuff looks like it's in the water, it isn't. It's land spaces that I'm discovering that are just, you know, spewing out the same way these are spewing out, but it looks worse here because we've got numbered spaces way out in the water. My shortest path, I think, because there's been like a removal here, I think, looks to be getting to there. But I can't do that quickly. Like, it's going to take me a while to get to the coast here. So I'm just going to move down that way. I played a doctor to get rid of... And why am I doing Almagro? It's not his fucking turn. Oh yeah, no, he's last. God, I'm getting so fucking confused. I should be doing Navarre. Or Navarrez. And I already moved him for some reason. God, I don't know what's going on. Okay, so Narvaez successfully plundered, got about 15 gold. Great. Whatever. Doesn't need anything. All right, played the card for him. Don't worry, it's going to happen anyway. He used the doctor. And Pizarro over here did a diplomacy. He got no effect because somebody played a hostile chief against him. It's basically getting so late in the turn that it's like, yeah, get rid of cards, you know. Even though Pizarro's not in really the running, it's time to hit him. So some bad stuff will happen to some people if they're doing things that are different from what other people have been doing. And now we're on green, and I've got that same issue that I was talking about, and I will walk my way back towards Panama, my head hanging in defeat. And I have heard some rumors about the Mississippi up here. With so many different leaders down here, oh, this isn't the Mississippi. Okay, so maybe I'll head this way, because if I look at the magical discovery tables, well, the 7 cities is worth 60. Yeah, actually all of them are. It's just the Amazon and the Mississippi are the most worthwhile ones. They're able to get to 60 on a 10 because they actually fucking exist. But yeah. Anyway, once I get to Panama, I'll worry about that. But basically, Almagro has given up. And he and De Soto and three companies afoot are, you know, unable to manage the way any of these other forces are able to. His capability of managing the forces that he had just didn't work. And now I check, and maybe we come to the end of the turn here. We do. Now, see, some of it is, I don't know. I don't know why I keep fucking up. One of my excuses is, though, that if I play more than one impulse, things start getting shakier, which seems weird. You would think I would play better if I'm playing straight through. But anyway, we hit sustenance. Cordoba needs food now because he's far from his allied city. Almagro definitely needs food. Narvaez needs food, I'm sure. Balboa has no friends. And Pizarro did not manage to make any. So that's the food markers. Try to figure out where they go in my tray. Finding it hard. I probably have it set up stupidly. And then we recover people. Plundered out stays. But the plunder markers come off the map. As does the rolled gold. There was a rolled gold somewhere. Yeah. Not going to have much effect with that. Yeah, I should have the numerical stuff together. I don't know. I thought food was part of expeditions, sort of. And now we check victory. Well, nobody cashed in their points, but even if they had, we wouldn't have been there. So let's say this guy got his full 90, which he can't get, but if it was basic game. Balboa, who is yellowish, would be at 140. And the additional for occupying a city or for having an allied city, those are less than 10 each. So he's clearly not going to have that. We move back here, we move this here, and now it would be time to play with the cards. I'm pooped now. Having to unwind did not help. It wasn't too complicated. I knew which cards I had discarded. I knew which cards were new, and all I had to do was reshuffle the strategy deck. But we're going away. Taking such big breaks because Candia, I'm forgetting about these secondary guys because we're all clustered in unimportant places before. But he's on the map. He needed to eat. He didn't have a food. He ended up in morale check and taking a hit off of it. Still have to read up on how these work. I don't think you have to actually explore them, but I suspect you can only move one a turn or something. I don't recall anything about them, so I'm going to look that up. Now that I'm actually using them. Over in Florida, I didn't have to worry about the rainforest or desert spaces. And I'm sure I read the rules, probably read them aloud as well, but anyway, went through the hands. There's a lot of cards that are no longer useful. It's kind of interesting because there are cards that are just useful at different stages of the game. So for example, with all the legends on the board, except one, almost all the legend cards are useless. Other things that are kind of useless, if you've only got one expedition, the move 2 expeditions card is not useful. If people aren't doing a lot of exploration, certain cards aren't very useful. The lost cards, the ambushes. If people aren't doing diplomacy, etc. So basically, we moved from the exploration stage where a lot of people were doing exploration actions and had to deal with that to the plunder stage. Diplomacy is probably always in play because you're going to find towns real early in the game. Then random event 6, a legend moves. I have to randomly select one of these legends. We've done this before. 1, 2, 3, 4. That one's going to move. Which map? Goes to this map. There aren't a lot of options. I'm not going to do rerolls. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like I often do. Unless it's the Mississippi. The 7 cities are now down here. So, good thing nobody went up that way yet. I have this blue-green thing, but I can clearly see that this is green and this is blue, but I think when they were the other way, I couldn't clearly see it. My suspicion was correct. In the map section, It says spaces marked D are rainforest, never contain civilizations, but can be moved through to get to other objectives. When I get to movement, doesn't really cover them, and over here they tell you what you can move through. It has to do with discovered and undiscovered spaces. These are kind of neither. So discovered and undiscovered are the numbered spaces. That's spelled out. An expedition must stop on entering any of the following: an undiscovered 0 through 4, a space containing a hostile town or city, space where another player did a discovery action. No mention, oh, here we go. An expedition need not stop upon entering a desert or rainforest, but if a unit ends its move in such a space, it must perform a morale check. Okay, well, there we go. I thought it wasn't there at all. I just didn't look one paragraph further. So yeah, you can just move right through them, but you don't want to stop in them. Legends are fine, though. Somehow you get to a magical place. You're going to suffer a result. It might be good, it might be bad, when you do your discovery in that space. So that should be good enough. Balboa decides to take his turn, uses a Voyagers of Fortune to boost his own forces, but to play a Free the King. And he's going to, instead of taking an action, he's going to actually attack Cordoba here with a really huge stack through Bolos and Encirclement, which means he has to stay 4 rounds. This is potentially going to fuck Cordoba up and bring the game into closer, situation. This is because Cordoba was sitting on top of a big stack of troops. Now, I'm playing Free the King the way I think it's supposed to be read, which is he keeps his king. This is an attempt to free the king that just gathers up more forces. Hey, I checked everyone else to see if they had a cannibalism card, because that would further really fuck things up. Someone had a defection card, which they might have used to get rid of the interpreter. That might be useful, but I'd rather, with Balboa close behind, honestly, with all this money on board, I'd rather get rid of that 40-point troop unit there. So they're holding on to that card. This was an expensive fight for Cordoba. After the 4 rounds, he did wipe everybody out, but he lost 2 cav and an artillery, which impacted his index, of course, and he did not get killed by it. At least there's that. But yeah, that was one hell of a nasty fight. But now I'm in a position to pillage again, whereas had the attack not happened, it's quite possible Cordoba might have left that space for fear and ended up in a less victory point producing situation. Now he's in a position where he can haul the victory points in. He's got nothing to fear unless somebody's got another uprising. Bit of complexity here. Let's see, the end of line. He did a plunder. I don't know what he got. Did a plunder. Nobody had anything nasty to play on it. It didn't have cards to move Candia. I'm hoping to be able to do some stuff with him after, I may do more plunders though, because again, I'm close to winning the game here, right? I'm at 90. I'm not going to get 60 out of it, but say 50, 140. That sounds about how it was last time, so I don't know. But yeah, about that level. However, my index has been dropped by other players' actions by a couple of points now. And then we finish up with Pizarro, who did a diplomacy here. Unfortunately, this is a town, not a city. I didn't really realize that when I played all my cards, but I don't have an option for a city, because this is an imperial city, which is different from a city. And I really wish they said imperial city on it. You don't replace imperial cities with allied cities, as far as I can tell, because then they would like downgrade and no longer be imperial cities or something. So I don't know, but anyway. That ends the first round, and we're probably done for a little bit because I'm low on tea. And it's about that time of day when I have to start my playing my computer game seriously. It's like I get a big bunch of quests and whatnot, and there's advantages to doing it right now, I guess. I mean, there's maybe more to doing it later, but plus I'm hungry. That whole hunger thing, so I haven't been going shopping and whatnot. But I discovered that I had bought apples last time I went shopping. I haven't bought apples in a fucking long ass time. So I have like 4 apples. That's 4 more meals, basically. You know, I mean, slather some peanut butter on them and whatnot. Yeah, I could put peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but bread is often a limiting factor in my life. It isn't right now. It's actually lunch meat. Lunch meat is the big limiter. But I should be able to make it to Sunday without any kind of real hazards. I mean, you know, I'm not going to run out of food. It's just like, how much prep time do I have to put into the food? Because there's things that, you know, and then I end up eating stuff that I don't really like that much as well, just to try to make it quicker. Like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. First couple of this Impulse Almagro makes his way down to this map on Panama. If these 2 Panama spaces were the same, he'd be able to move there and do an exploration if he wished. It doesn't make much difference, though. I'm probably going to be taking a boat down, so whatever. Of course, that makes ingress kind of difficult, but again, whatever. The next one is Balboa. I did a diplomacy here. I had a trade good card, just hoping that, you know, I could convert that from a hostile city, maybe get my food and whatnot that I need. I didn't get it. I probably should have just gone here and done my diplomacy instead, although I'm probably going to need to loot. But this would be so advantageous to have as an allied city. I didn't get anything. Somebody threw a nasty at me. And that's it. The rest of the line, Narvaez and Cordoba both plundered. This is second plunder. Didn't get as much. I think around 15 or 20 each. And now, you know, when you've got 2 plunders against, it's time to think about pulling back and trying to do other things. Also, no food here. I have food, but I'm not, you know, sustaining completely. So, you know, loot some other cities. You get a better payout from it probably. Let's just take a look at it, see if that's correct. So like $30 for a 4 on the Imperial Capital, right? But that goes down to 15, which is about equivalent to another city. And there's less chance of me pillaging it out. Of course, I have to walk back and forth, expending actions on that. For Pizarro, he moved to the capital and start pillaging there. Nobody cares about Pizarro. Very few people care much about Narvaez. They're just, you know, they're out of it, right? At this point. That puts me to the end of the round. What I forgot to mention is I played one of these extra turn things for Sandoval with Pizarro to move out to sea, and now you've got Coronado. No. You've got this guy, Almagro, making his way out to sea as well. This is mostly safe. If storms happen, I'll end up on the coast and I have to feed myself. But I can stay on a boat indefinitely because, of course, boats have infinite food, as everyone knows. Now, I don't know what I did. Green. Moved out to sea as well, right. Okay. Cordoba played... So Balboa is doing a plunder on this city that he couldn't diplomacy yet. Since I'm sitting on that city anyway, I might as well grab the gold and then go up here. I may go to this one as well, just sort of raping, cities as I go, grabbing what I can, because I would really rather be able to do diplomacy safely somewhere, since I can't do it where I was, and I don't have any food. But Cordoba played a poison darts on me, didn't do anything, that's fine. Now, it's not in the rules, it would be for combat, I only could, but I'm ruling I can only play one of these in a single action. Because the way it's actually worded is played at the moment the target player declares diplomacy or plunder. So instead of being able to drop 2 of them, which Cordoba actually has, it wouldn't come up, I wouldn't think of it otherwise. But yeah. And let's see. Did I roll the plunder? I did not yet. Narvaez, next? No, I did him. Right? I can't tell who's who. Narvaez moved here to do some diplomacy, that's what. Likewise, Cordoba moved here, do diplomacy. If I get an allied city, that makes me able to stay there safely. I don't really want to plunder this terribly, because if I do so, it brings up another pile of forces, and that could be bad. Everybody could play their nasties on me. I got away lucky here, I guess. And finally, Pizarro did his plunder. Nobody cares about Pizarro again, I get Balboa and Pizarro confused. I almost wish I switch them, but it would be a lot of work to move all the cards and counters and everything. Just in terms of where they are. This is the 3rd impulse. There's some chance of the turn ending, but it will not. I'm going to keep going for a little bit. My raid game, so it's a weird situation. There's an event that's starting, after midnight. That's when they always start, because the company is based in Ukraine, although they had to flee there, or a lot of it is. But it just, it doesn't fit my schedule very well to be there right at the beginning of an event. But this is probably true for everyone, is that the day sort of starts in terms of getting new energy and everything to be able to do stuff at 4 o'clock here now. It was 5, but it's the same time for me because I don't really pay attention, but I halfway do. But yeah, so at 4 p.m. or whatever. So I have I get all kind of energy and everything, and new quests and all kind of stuff like that are sort of personal things at 4 p.m. And 8 hours later, the day kind of starts, new events drop and everything. Kind of wish they were better linked, because you get all these goodies and you get all this stuff to do that gets you more goodies, but the thing you want to work towards isn't available yet. So this is part of why my sleeping schedule got so fucked up, is that, I'm thinking about playing a little bit here and then going to bed and sleeping until a little after midnight, getting up and doing some stuff there. Of course, there's problems with that because there's another thing which takes place, which is on a kind of a 6 hour, no, that can't be right, can it? Yeah, 6 hour timer that regenerates every 6 hours. Now, your energy and stuff does regenerate as well. You just get a bonus in terms of these missions that give you stuff. So most of it's all kind of flat, but then there's these couple of jagged humps that you can take advantage of. Now, it would probably be best if I got up, at midnight every day to play, and that's when I started, but I don't. But anyway, I'm doing something, with my energy right now, and I got a huge load of energy for the start of the day thing, because a couple times a month they give you a big wad. And I used all that up, but I've been using it up on something that I really needed to do, but that no events or anything give you a bonus for the most part. And so I've kind of neglected it all this time. There's a few things that I really need to do that, nothing supports it. But it's maybe my best thing is just to spend everything that I have right now for today on continuing, developing stuff that I have been ignoring, and just say screw it to this kind of event thing that's coming up, because I've seen, every time I've dealt with these before, they're kind of wishy-washy. They're just not that impressive. And they gave us all kind of heavy stuff to work with over the Christmas period. And there's going to be another load of heavy stuff coming up. Yeah, I end up spending resources that I shouldn't. Anyway, what the fuck am I doing talking about Raid so much? Why? I'm basically out of tea and can't start the next impulse. Aha. All right. Up here, thinking a little bit about the victory condition point limits. So the basic game is like 75 points. We're well past that with a number of the players, at least. Not all of them. There's a couple who are, basically nowhere. But the standard game is 200. Now that gives a lot of time to kind of develop up and give a chance for people to catch up who've, maybe taken a bad turn or something like that, to use the mechanisms to hunt the leaders and all that. However, it is a fairly long game that way, which is why the game kind of suggests, hey, you might not want to play the whole thing, but make sure you set it at least 50. Well, 50 would be ridiculously small. That would be like, find the Amazon, look, I win. But for the actual treasure compacting, now in the basic game, you just convert gold into victory points. Boom, 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 it's gone, right? It's just fine. Here, you have taxes to pay. So there's the 1/5 tax that goes to the crown, which to me is more a thematic or chromey type. I'd rather call it chrome because it, really does represent the reality. And whenever I use the term thematic, I'm usually meaning, like a euro means thematic, which is just pasted on theme, really. Even when people are like, gaping about how thematic a game is, usually what they're actually talking about is pasted on shit on a mechanism that has nothing to do with what the game is actually about. But here the mechanism has very much to do with the reality. So that 20% taken off the top, that is a real historical thing. But it's just a nasty tax that everybody has to pay. And it drags the game out even further than the 200 points. But beyond that, and one reason why people are hoarding gold is that you pay an additional tax. So the 20%, hey, you pay that no matter what. It has no effect, right, on when you turn in money. But the number of troops you have, the number of conquistadors you have, these things impact how often you want to turn in, because you pay a set of shares out to everyone every time, and it's not a percentage share, it's a fixed share, which means every time you turn in gold, you end up paying that, and you're not allowed to turn in gold if you don't. Just as a point as to why people are collecting up such huge amounts of cash instead of converting them to victory points. And that's getting troublesome, because if you're close to winning, you're in a situation where bad things could happen, right? And you'd like to log your victory points, but you also don't want to turn them in until you're ready to win, unless you have some other really valid reason for doing so. For example, you want it for a rally roll or something. Even though nasty shit could happen. Like, someone like this could get wiped out. No, he has no money, so who cares? I just confused myself. So I've got these Indian scouts, and I looked at how they're worded. The expedition gets local scouts. I've read this before, but the combat roll is 2 in your favor. 1 per combat. once per combat, I guess, or to cancel an Indian ambush card played against you. And then it gets discarded. Well, I've been using them, or thinking, maybe not using them because nobody's exploring, as Indian guides, which give you a bonus on finding stuff. Just forgetting what they were, really. And the key thing there is I have not been using them at all to help me in combat, in which case they just get discarded. And I've also been assuming that these people who have Indian scouts, you know, they have all the assets they need, right? They have the scout, they have the interpreter. That's what you really need. Bearers don't seem to actually do anything since the stacking limitations aren't in the rules. There's real things missing in the rules, as far as I can tell. Alvarez on his turn does diplomacy here. He gets a food point and a gold point. He actually rolled really, really high, but somebody dicked him over with a bad translation, so he didn't get an allied city, which he would have loved. He rolled like an 11. He's so shitty that he had almost no chance, and played his own bonus. Now, this leads me to an interesting point that I want to highlight. So, something I like about the game. It may seem odd to you that like the Spaniards can't seize food, when they're pillaging and plundering, but they put gold to such a high emphasis, right? That they really suffered this kind of situation in the attack on what is it, Mexico City, Tenochtitlan or whatever. I may be mistaken there. That may just be a site nearby, but on Mexico City itself, they were actually starving within the city when they were trying to run away with their gold. So, you know, maybe they were being fed some, but but when things turned against them, when it became hostile, it was really problematic. Now, that wouldn't really be well represented by the situation. Like if you're in an imperial city, but if you're doing diplomacy in an imperial city and not plundering it, if it's not actually hostile to you, you'll be gaining food. You just won't be getting the infinite food that you get out of a truly allied city. Anyway, I'm being slow. My tea is almost out again because raid is being weird. I'm up against one boss that like, I can kind of ignore it and watch videos or come up here and play and let it play itself, and maybe it'll just win. Or I can pay a lot of attention and, you know, actually do everything manually and try to, you know, and get the timing right so that I win against it. And I've chosen to just let it play itself. Remaining players, Cordoba tried to do diplomacy and fucked it up. Again, got dicked over, even though he played a missionary as well. Got a bad translation thrown on him. So nastiness, he rolled shitty. And Pizarro succeeded in another plunder, but only got like 15 bucks out of it. Which, you know, hey, it still helps. I mean, with a 200-point victory conditions, each time you roll on that, it's a chunk. That puts me to the end turn check, 2 through 5. Doesn't happen, but now I do have to brew another cup and check on what is going on downstairs. Okay, Almagro takes the first turn in this impulse. And the first thing he did was play the disgruntled soldiers on Candia. Checking to make sure. It was definitely the target I wanted as soon as I noticed it. He's the only guy with a morale hit, though. And caused some problems, you know. He's an excess source of victory points for the blue player. But even though it succeeded a mano de Dios from the hand, not the asset, canceled it out. But draining those is valuable, too. As long as you're doing a hit big enough that the player's willing to throw a card, you did something good, you know? It's like you take away one of his shields or whatever. Then for his own turn, he advanced forward and found a town. Now, the calculation of where the towns are has become more complicated because now there's people moving into, you know, that Argentina area, the what traditionally was the Incan Empire, but it kind of didn't show up this time there. There was an empire up here, and I don't remember what it is. The only reason I even know about it is through the EU computer game. EU2 had it in it. Yeah, so an area that was kind of sparse before is now becoming of interest. And yeah, it turns out that the furthest from any explorer is this one. But, you know, again, the calculation, it had been, you find the middle ground here, and now it's a little harder to cope with. Yeah, I mean, not really harder, it's just different. It's always hard once there's any kind of distances involved and any kind of, you know, competing conquistadors to calculate from. Some diplomacy I have to make sure, because I think it's another 10, 12 bucks, whatever, 10 bucks. He's well over 100, so I'm like, am I absolutely sure, because he's up here, that he's not going to be able to win? And no, he's not. I mean, if you think about it, it's, say I get 100 of that, which I'm not going to get, right? Because I'm actually going to get closer to 90. Plus 50 is 150. Plus I have that. That's maybe 10 more, 160. I don't think I have any allied cities anywhere. It would be okay if I left some back around here. They would still count towards me. It just doesn't quite do it, which is a pity, because I'd love to end it this turn, but I think it's next turn that it's going to end. It's just, you know, pushing the barriers a little further. The reason I'd like to end it is tonight's dancing night, and I'm close to the end of the turns and whatnot, and I know Saturday's recoveries, you know, Sunday I have shopping. It's supposed to be pretty, at least not raining. Should have gone early this week, but, and you know, then that really drags things out. I'd rather be starting a new game. Quickly, Nevaez moved to a different hostile city. Intention being, if the turn continues, I can do more plundering. That puts me over to Cordoba, and nobody took advantage of this stack, probably because I was away. But, you know, I mean, you're giving up your own action to do that. Certainly Balboa is like, maybe I can outrace him. You know, I got more money than him right now, and maybe enough to make up for the difference. You know, Nevaez is also in trying to run some score up there. So Almagro, he might do it, but he's got kind of this, these two have this animosity towards each other that, you know, came from them actually clashing, where I'm playing bad cards against them. And this happens in real games a whole lot, where it's like, all right, you know, neither of us is going to fucking win, or I'm not going to win. I don't really worry about taking the leader down and making it easier for the guy who screwed me. Fuck that. I'm going to make sure the guy who screwed me doesn't win, you know. Nevaez is not really in the running. Neither of these really are. Almagro's too weak, but he has points banked. Nevaez is got no points banked, but could generate quite a few. He's at about the same level as Cordoba in terms of what's just sitting on hand. Of course, he doesn't have Candia as a reserve. So Cordoba has a few options here. I have plenty of food. I'm near an allied city. My best move, I could attack, but my best move may well be to move Candia towards that Amazon space. And similarly, Sandoval finds himself a village. Now, maybe I shouldn't have done that, because now I have to eat. How about I go out here instead? where I'm not really challenging any of the others. Because I don't really want to, I don't want to have to take morale hits, although I feel pretty safe. But the reason is I'm not going to gain anything this impulse because I'm sitting on a 2-plunder city. And chances are, if I move, it's not going to make it to the next impulse. However, I could be way off, and that's what we check right now. And indeed, we go another impulse this turn, which kind of screws the people who made those choices. They could have done something to improve their main guys who, you know, are pulling in the gold. Aggro pushes forward and finds nothing there. It's not terrible, but I'm going to need to do another diplomacy or something to get some food on the way into my expedition towards whatever I'm heading for, Prester John. And Nevaez managed to get a plunder, but he only got like 12 bucks off of it. So Boa has the tough choice, like many of these have. Do I use Coronado, who's actually not bad, right? And send him out, you know, to go look for one of these. But here's the thing. A couple of people have the jump on me. It makes it really unlikely I'm going to find anything. There's nothing over here. Maybe something will move, because I'd have the jump on all of them. So I'm going to just continue my diplomacy on this imperial city, I guess. I could attack it, but that would just wipe the troops out. I could move into a place, but the chance of another turn is so low. Another impulse is so low. It's starting to get real close. Still not close enough. I count up, you know, what he has here. It's 122. I look over here, another 50, 172, I guess. Make it 174, right? Now this is assuming 100% conversion like in the basic game, which isn't the case, and that's where the problem comes. 174, I think this is worth 8. That brings it to 182. So I start looking even more. 5 more, 187. If I donated some money, I'd lose some of my gain, but might get a better gain off of the governor track. I am damn close. If it goes another impulse, I get another gold roll or something. But the problem is, these start decreasing. The more and more you beg the umpires to pay you off. This was enough for Candia to run into the rainforest. Ooh, actually he can't. It's 3 moves, but 2 with a discovery. I don't think he can get in there. Let me look this up again, because I found the place where it says that, and I gotta see. Around this are so sparse that I kind of don't want to do it. That I feel like, you know, I can use a bit of discretion here. But honestly, I don't want these to be terribly easy. So, and if I recall correctly, it's bad to end your turn, to end an actual turn. Ending your movement in one of these requires a morale check. I think it's bad to end your turn in one of those as well. It's a rainforest. It's the equivalent of mosquitoes. It's going to require yet another morale check. So that is not my optimal move. So maybe Cordoba clears out the forces there. How all the cards kind of get played early in the turn, usually. Well, that wasn't really the case here. There were very few battles. And on top of that, things like Painted Warriors didn't really give an edge. So a whole shitload of crap got thrown because it's like, hey, bonus, we get a chance to use these at this point. Basically, the opportunity really wasn't there against the right people. And Cordoba is one of the right people to hit. So now it all comes out. It would have come out against anyone at this stage in the game, I think. So he's hit with a tactical advantage, which means that this is all bad stuff. This is not, none of it was played by Cordoba. I don't believe he has any combat cards. Okay. So he's facing, before his charge even, 30, 42, 84, but a shitty roll, which only does one. That'll of course be a cav, because the attacker wants to hurt him. There might be some times when a couple players come to an agreement. I don't really understand, you know, if you're taking your action to attack, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And otherwise, the combat is usually done by a card, although I don't know who gets to play the natives if one of the players attacks them. There might be a mechanism for it, otherwise I would just say randomly, in which case, you know, but how much can you count on a deal like that lasting? But you might have a, hey, we're both doing poorly, look, help me out this time, I'll help you out sometime, you know, with something. Okay, so that was his hit. Now he gets his cav charge, though, which is 24. Do I want to use Cordoba on this? I don't know. It's late in the game. I can afford to lose him, I guess. 24. I could use this poor sucker. I'm only at +1. Cordoba's big bonus is in rally. +1. Got nothing else. Also a shitty roll, but it does something. And now I get my main force, which is going to be 24, I think 34 at +1. Oh, jeez. Which does nothing. Okay. This applies still. This no longer does. We go to the next round. I'm going to do these guys first, but it is simultaneously. Simultaneous. 27, 54, with no bonuses. Jesus. A morale hit, that's useful, but it's not costing him anything terrible. And he was at 24, 34 at +1. There's a roll. That's going to finish this off. All right. So the battle did not really have any kind of great effect, but there you have it. And a leader loss check for Cordoba. And this is why I might not have wanted to use him, but he is happy and healthy. I was getting really pissed. He moved Sandoval down here. There just comes a point where, screw it, I got to take the morale hit, and we'll roll in there. That should probably be a village, but we'll see. Turn ends, and one of the things is there's a lot, with all these excess people moving around, taking up excess turns or whatever, there are a lot of people out there without food who are going to have to make morale checks. This is kind of the, I don't know, a lot of these sort of people who went off hunting these legends just ended up disappearing or dying in known ways. And it is kind of fitting. They're not worth enough to focus your game energies on for the most part. And if you're using them as a secondary person when you have cards or when the turn is lasting so long that like you don't really want to do anything with your main guy, well, you're kind of risking these guys. To say was not that was just deleted. This becomes difficult, especially playing it solo the way I am. In terms of, I'm so used to just checking each player, but you don't know where the hell they are, right? And that's pretty clear with your main guy. That's easy to remember. Now, maybe it's easy to remember if you're playing just, you know, one player instead of all over the place. But in terms of the solo stuff, there's only one guy who's safe right now, who's Coronado down here. So that's kind of a key thing to remember. But yeah, I have to check everybody on the board when I'm used to kind of ignoring all those guys and just looking at the main guys that I know where they are. Somebody, you know, was able to make the victory points, and you check it before this point whether or not you're going to. You check it during your turn to see, hey, do I want to turn in money or whatever. There's no real need for me to do the victory check phase. It's kind of weird, but that's just the formal time when victory is actually checked. You, as players, you would know. We had Sandoval did not find a village. It's actually about 50-50 whether or not you find something. And you might find a town. You might find mosquitoes. I don't include that in the 50%. Okay. Definitely taking a pause here. Probably burn some energy in my game or something. I had some thoughts that I wanted to consider here before. On knowing that this is the last turn of the game coming up. And it almost certainly is. First of all, there's an interesting sort of push your luck mechanic that I see that's going to develop here. Because if a couple of people are close to winning, and I think there actually are a couple, Almagro, if he gets that discovery and gets big points off of it, and he doesn't have a Mano de Dios sitting in hand, so that might be difficult, or sitting out in front. I don't know, he may have one in hand, but I don't think so. Is right up in the running with the blue player. And the yellow Balboa is definitely right up there with them. They're approximately equal at this point. The one advantage that Cordoba really has is he's got this Candia guy who might also make some points off a discovery, and those points could be telling. But here's the thing. Discovery points, fine. You can hold them off till later to do for Cordoba. So that's kind of a neat thing. But let's put ourselves in Balboa's shoes. If he wants to score his points, sure, the first, say, 3 impulses, he can, collect money with no considerations whatsoever. But then you get into the 2 through 5, 2 through 7s, and you're like, there's a fair chance the game will end. I could break my 200 points here, make a victory by that point. I'm just hypothesizing here as to, we don't know that the luck could foil this. But I could be in a position where I'm going to win or break the 200 points. But now I have to consider somebody who's a little behind me may hold off. Certainly if they haven't made their 200 points, they're going to hold off. So maybe I don't turn in until somebody's a threat, right? Which this might cause it to go yet another turn beyond this next one. It reminds me a little of Rover play in fucking Rail Baron. And there's just this sort of competition that's developing here that, in terms of like, hey, do I risk holding off? Do I risk turning in my money now? What are the odds of the turn ending? Because if it does and I don't turn in, well, then it's going to push it another turn, and maybe I don't, that's not that terrible a thing. But if 2 people are in the position where they're both above the 200, and say the one who's ahead goes first, they've got to choose. Do they turn in now? If the game continues going, the second person might hold off, well, probably will, and turn their money in on some later impulse and have surpassed me at that point. And of course, I could turn in again at a later impulse too, but remember, there's that additional taxation that comes across for the units and the extra conquistadors you have. Now, some of this kind of reminds me a little bit of Blackbeard. In Blackbeard, you have this sort of, hey, your money doesn't really count until you squirrel it away. And you can keep squirreling it away and getting victory points for it. There's not really the same cost to that, but there's sort of a timing issue and whatnot. I think this actually manages a greater suspense at the end of the game than Blackbeard does. But what it doesn't manage, but what it ends up doing is maybe making you feel like you're making a choice, and at the end of the game it may come down to there's 2 or 3 players where it's just, hey, how many impulses does this go? And that determines who wins the game. To me, that's kind of unsatisfying. It feels like the coin problem, which is that it's really easy to keep anybody from winning and to keep the game really tight and close, and that sounds fantastic as a design concept. Like, the game will always be a nail biter. Yeah, except it also might often come, well, in coin, almost always come down to, hey, what card flips over? What's the luck on that last turn? Whatever. You know, when the game actually runs down as opposed to somebody getting their automatic victory. And likewise here, it feels like if the game is competitive and is a nail biter, it really comes down to a die roll. I don't know how terrible that is. I mean, you know, if two people are playing equally well and getting decent luck throughout, or equivalent luck throughout, what should it come down to? You know, I mean, but I don't know. It just looks like a thread of that. I was also thinking, you know, people who watch just the review, because I consider the playthrough to be the main part, and I know most people don't fucking watch the playthroughs. That's fine. I'm impressed that I can give anything through just, you know, the review and the intro side of things to the people who don't have the time for that. But the chances of these kind of observations making it into the review are so fucking low. I mean, the intention behind the review, some people who enjoyed my playthroughs were suggesting, hey, why don't you do a review of the games as well? Was kind of to try to capture a lot of these thoughts, but I don't fucking write them down. And when I do sit down and do my review, even if I remembered it when I begin the review video, I don't write down anything then either, so it might just get dropped. For whatever that's all worth. I'm chatty as hell. And you know, for that's what that's worth, it's what do I see the different parts of my videos to be? So the intro part of the video is largely give you enough context to understand the playthrough, right? And in some cases, well, in most cases nowadays, I'm digging deep into the rules and just reading through them and looking at them for inconsistencies and whatnot, because that is part of the experience. I try to give an intro that's a little bit more high level when I can. Sometimes I'm not really able to do that effectively. And then the playthrough is still the heart of everything. And then the review is sort of this mixture of a review of my thoughts on the game as a whole, but also a review of what happened, you know, what I learned about the game and what I know from the past. Now, the intro often has a lot of, you know, if I've had a lot of experience with a game, I'll tell you right up, you know, I love this game, I hate this game, whatever, ahead of time. Anyway. Those of you who are watching at this point in the game know all this already, but I'm just trying to express the words and or keep my mouth motoring along for a little longer. Here into, I guess, New Year's Day, the night of New Year's Day. Got my shopping done. Oddly made some sort of resolution-y type things. It didn't really feel like it was associated with New Year's, and I do these things regularly, but well, I don't know. And finally made it up here to get through the beginning of the turn, to get to the impulses. A lot of discards, oddly a lot. Just, I don't know, the cards didn't seem worth holding. A lot of the ones that I had, maybe because people had drained their hands so much of the gooder stuff that they was holding, the gooder stuff they was holding, that last turn resulted in draws that filled them out with hands that weren't that great. Certainly the case with this guy who had been holding a lot of good cards for a while and now had a bunch of shit in his hand after having used them, I guess. I did have some hard calls, though, after drawing up to 10. New shuffled deck. This turn will probably be the last. And the random event for the turn is an obnoxious one. Averse wins. C moves may be no longer than 3 boxes, including the land box you end the move in. Including any land box you end the move in. That's not going to affect too many people. It would impact Coronado up here if he's going to get used. I don't know how many other people are impacted by it. The knowledge that this is probably the last turn had people throwing away things, including, well, Prester John is on the board already. Nobody had El Dorado, so that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a matter of, there's not going to be time to switch the direction that somebody's heading in to go up here, and these are also filled out that the chances of something, unless it were, if he had a card, if Balboa had a card, that might be worth the shot because I'm in position to take advantage of it. But he was not the one who had it. I'm kind of wiped out just doing that. Shopping always throws me into my body can't take it anymore. All right, so I'm going to probably go downstairs. I tried taking a nap. I have coffee. Haven't been doing that for a while. We'll see what that does to me. But I can't play Raid right now. I mean, I could, but there's advantages to me holding off. Struggling to get anything played. Damn Raid. But so the white player started off with the usual, hey, I'm the first player in the first impulse, dumped a bunch of nastiness on the blue player. He grabbed a governor influence to improve his own status with the governor, just to reduce the victory point penalties he's taking. But he dropped 2 arrest warrants just to reduce Cordoba's value by a couple of spaces. That's a big deal. The arrest warrant itself, used as an arrest warrant, doesn't really do shit. Because Cordoba's way over here, there's nobody near him, and it's just not gonna... He also has a large force. Cordoba's not going to be stopped by arrest warrants. But lobbying the governor against him reduces his victory point total. Now, this is a big boon for this guy. I might have wanted to spread them out, put 1 on each. That would have put them both at -2. But I'm a little more pissed at the guy on my map for whatever reason. I don't know why. There's just more nastiness when you're on the same map because, people have been throwing shade at each other. Narvaez is going to do a plunder for what that's worth. And that will probably attract no badness because his victory points are so low. He's got some cash on hand, but not enough to put him in the running. There's some chance Cordoba might throw something at him after being hit so hard. As he throws some poison darts, he's not really that worried. Although, at 122 at this point, oops, forgot to put a plunder marker down. Gotta remember to do that shit. At 122, he's actually jumped a big deal. But if he has nothing, I mean, basically. And he has some debt as well, $10 of debt, $20 of debt, which basically counts against him. So that's pretty nasty there. Trying to tell whose is whose here. I think this is him. I don't know who this is. Probably him, since he has no 1s and a 10 over there. That yellow, I was also mistaken. This is the green player who's over here. The yellow is this one. That's pretty obvious once you see it, but after that, so Nevaeh's got a fair amount of money, and then what did I play next? I played Almagro, who again, you throw all your cards down right at the beginning. He got some maize, great. He's got some food. It's like this flush of all the good cards and that, just attached to you on that first round. But he moved into a space that could not possibly have anything in it. Well, I don't know about that. Yeah, could not possibly. It was a level 3 with nothing next to it, because these two are here. Now, if I had approached from a different direction, maybe there would be something there. Maybe there would be a big city there, you know, or an imperial in some cases or not. That kind of thing weirds me out. Like, but you get that same kind. So you get skewed odds in Source of the Nile. Like, if you're approaching in one direction and you don't like what's happening, you could kind of curve around and try to make the river go other ways by being able to do mechanical stuff. And this kind of reminds me of that. I don't think it's as important. You know, certainly at this point in the game, I'm just trying to get, you know, to a launching point towards one of those legends. And that's him. And we finish things up. Let's see. Balboa moved a space to get back to the hostile capital, because that'll produce more income than doing diplomacy with this city, and, you know, attacking the city. I wouldn't get an income roll right away anyway, but it is going to eat up a couple of actions while I move there. I'm in kind of an icky place in terms of being able to move around. I'm not sure what I really want to do. You know, it's like my balance is not as good as it could be. But I think what my plan is because I think this is the last turn, I'm just going to pillage that as much as I can. On to blue. Did a plunder, but this is just a normal city. Hard to tell because I don't have a little marker on the back of these guys, because they look fine. They look understandable. Like, I can differentiate the front of these guys, but I can't differentiate them by the back. The back looks almost like this. Actually, if anything, this is darker than the back of this. Nah, I think it's the same. Hard to tell. And then Pizarro did some pillaging, but he actually played a card. And everybody's playing, you know, stuff to fiddle around with the governor's track. Played a card to move Sandoval up. Again, problematic. Going from a 1, or going from a 0 into a 1. That's a -4. Because I didn't have anything there, which got me mosquitoes. Normally you can't find mosquitoes in the level 1 stuff, but again, the direction that I'm heading in determines that there are more mosquitoes there than there would normally be. Normally at the beginning of the game, you wouldn't go from here to here. You'd like move to another 0 space to try to clear things out. And the system kind of works in that sense, you know. You found shit here. There's no indication of any civilization deeper in, so you keep exploring, right? That produces the right effect. But now I'm trying to get from point A to point B by cutting my way through. And it still kind of makes sense. The only thing is, had I gone this way, I might have found stuff in this coming from this direction, where now there's pretty much no chance that I find anything. And worse than that, I might find worse than nothing. I find a swamp or something, you know. It's okay, but it feels like the causation is just wrong. And you start doing things like that to me, and my brain starts really kind of gripping onto them and saying, no, that doesn't make sense. As I have to remember, and I may have screwed up on my last turn, this is not the king to this city. This city is part of this empire. Yeah, it's clear. If you flip it over, you can see. And I may have implemented a bonus from the king from up here instead, which it wouldn't have been right if I did that. I'm not sure if I did or not. I suspect I did. Crow got himself into an ugly position where he was exploring this space, got ambushed. He had a desertion card, though, which let him pull the bigger unit out. But neither side's very big. He's taken a couple of morale hits already. He could retreat, but it would be back to here. So I guess I'm going to continue on. This could be bad, though. So I'm facing a 10. And we take a hit this time, which isn't necessarily as bad as those morale hits, which are on lower numbers. And that might disturb some people, and that's why there's always a That's why you'll always take a morale hit if you took any damage as sort of an optional rule. I come back, I'm at 6 at +2, and I get my hit. So now I have troops added to my force, which is kind of a big deal, and I kind of wanted that to happen. Leader loss check. There isn't one, and now I get to discover. And now, even though I came from this direction, I can use this town to leverage. So I'm going to be in a level 2 area with a town next to me, and there's this village too, but that doesn't count. Town at level 2 hurts me not at all. Do I have any bonuses? I have scouts, which I always fucking forget to even look at them because I just assume that they're the other thing, the guide. Which would have been nice for my situation. But I get another town there, and now I gotta hunt for the furthest town from anyone, which is gonna be painful. I can tell because there are a lot of people in a lot of different places. Fortunately, I looked on this map first and found a bunch of different 3 space aways, like 3 of them. But over here, there's a couple that are 5 spaces away from an expedition. It doesn't look like it because there's big piles of Indians around. Let me make sure this isn't 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. Okay. Oh, I don't know why I'm pulling this. So that's odd or even for those 2. All right, so this one comes off. This comes off, and I don't know where I am. I'm here with a town. Okay, but the the reason I kind of came back as early as I did was I wanted to sit, and I thought I could say it while I was operating. I wanted to say that this is one of the 2 mechanically obnoxious factors in the game. I mean, take away the graphical problems that like the counters have and whatnot. And, rules lookups because the cards don't tell you something that they have plenty of room for, like the ambush cards have plenty of room for additional text that instead they refer you into the rules for something that, could have easily fit on the card. But finding the towns is, and probably mainly for solo, all the discarding and regenerating your hand and then discarding again, that's mechanically kind of burdensome. I view this hunting for locations to be more problematic because I think very few people will play the game the way I'm playing it, as a multiplayer solo situation. Given that there are solo rules for the game, most people are happier with that kind of thing. But I want to capture that competitive nature that the game actually has, and the only way to really investigate that for me is to play it solo, because if I play the game opposed, I'm not thinking enough to be able to analyze it. Nor will I remember. Okay. Let me figure out what happened. So I think I had finished him. Wherever he is, Almagro, yeah. And that means Balboa moved into here. Now you see a big stack of units. That happened during Pizarro's turn. He played a Freed the King card. He didn't use his turn to activate that force, but Cordoba could use them. And, doing a lot of damage to Balboa would have an impact. But here's the thing. Cordoba would want to do that if it was effective. But there's such a chance, and it's a big force. It's like 100 troops. But there's still a big chance that Balboa wins the fight. He doesn't have enough to win the game right now, but clearing that out puts him back in the position he was in. So it might not be worth taking an action to do that. That might also constitute sort of a delay of game. But with them there, it definitely at least costs Balboa another turn, because Balboa can't loot that place until those troops are gone. Okay. Cordoba, so that did not happen on Balboa's turn. Balboa just moved there. On Cordoba's turn, he finished plundering this out, and nobody played any nasties on him because they figure he's going to go into this imperial city, or perhaps this one. Either one does me good stuff. And then Pizarro, like I said, he played the Free the King card, and he plundered, got himself some good gold. He's up at 120 or so. Of course, he has nothing on the board and some debt. Pausing out here, I don't know if I'm going to be back up. It's really becoming very hard for me to play this, just in terms of like finding any interest in it. I don't know, because of the pure resource extraction nature of it. It's just like, okay, you know, do I really want to go through this much effort to just be able to roll dice on a table and play cards against each other? Because that's what it feels like to me. Like, I'm just not catching anything from the narrative that makes me excited about it. But I always finish things, well, not always, but I try to when it's possible. So it just ends up putting off whatever I actually would like to be doing, because I've got time to waste. Narvaez moved over to this city to loot it instead. I've got the right king for that one. I was heading this way, but it doesn't really make sense. I might as well take advantage of this city. Collecting up a nice amount of money, but again, I don't have any points on the board yet. So I'm well behind, and that put me to Almagro, who stayed in place and rallied his force. He had to get rid of those brow hits. I don't know if that's the best move, but honestly, I am not going to get to the total necessary to win the game on this turn, and other people probably are. So it kind of doesn't matter what I do. I was in a hard position here. I would like to pillage this city, no question. But I've got the king. The thing is, I could move to something. Well, these are just towns. They're not going to be worth anything. I can move to this city and plunder it. That would take me a turn. It would take 2 turns, wouldn't it? Yeah, because there's hostiles on both sides. So I guess I'm going to fight. But that means I'm going to be putting a fight in at a time when a lot of people probably still have nastiness to play. Balboa, Ordos being the actual combat guy in case there's a wounding, because they're both equal in combat, and I don't want to lose Balboa. He was faced with a desertion that lost his big unit that he was counting on to help him generate some damage, and an encirclement. He's gone the 4 rounds. You can see it's not going well. He took a hit here. Somebody actually had cannibalism. They chose not to play it because they want to play it against him. They figured the large troops, I think they're the ones who played the encirclement, the large troops in the encirclement would combine to make this a difficult fight for Balboa. The desertion was someone else, and that was a bigger deal, actually, perhaps. But yeah, the encirclements forced me to fight quite a bit. I could lose my last horse here, which is kind of painful because on a good roll, I can knock out a big unit with that horse before it gets to swing at me. However, if this is the last turn, I kind of want to, I've made my decision there. I kind of want to keep fighting. So I think I'm going to. So we're looking at 23 to 8, 10, 16 at +1. The Indians are going to fall apart, and Balboa will survive. But yeah, this is a tough fight that he's undertaking now. I can actually afford to retreat, and I don't know if anybody has. Cordoba may have done one at one point or something, but I'd lose half my gold, so I actually have to keep fighting. That +1 isn't making up for the difference in size. I have to retreat, and that is probably the game. I think that hands the game to Cordoba, unless somebody can stop him. No! All right, so half this money goes away. Should have cashed it in before I launched my attack. But yeah, I was pretty confident I could win the fight. In addition, do I lose Ordos? I do not. Turning out badly everywhere, even though no one's been playing too many nasty cards here. Narvaez tapped his out. He only got like 15 gold from it. That puts him at 150 something, not enough to win this turn probably. Which we kind of suspected. And then Almagro moved into here and didn't find anything, which is kind of a pain because it's going to be harder to come out through it. Remember, what I'm doing is I'm saying you can't move 3 spaces and discover a legend. I didn't look that up specifically, but I know normal discovery you can only move 2 spaces for, which means he's going to have to spend a turn in the rainforest. And it could be an end of turn because we're coming towards late in the impulse track. I may have to chance it though. A lot of people taking risks, and those risks are turning out badly. Basically with the the game's gonna end this turn. Gotta try to cash my stuff. Gotta get into a position where I can cash my stuff. And now Cordoba more and more looks like maybe he's just coasting to victory. We'll see if anybody has any nastiness for him. I hope not. I hope it ends this turn. I hope so. Oh, it took his turn to move into a place where maybe he can do some diplomacy, heal up a little bit. He's pretty much out of it, though, at this point. Unless something terrible happens to Cordoba. Cordoba did his plunder. No one had a card to play against him. Now, Balboa has an uprising, but he doesn't want to play it until after the plunder marker's put here to increase the amount of troops that are there. That might have been a mistake. I might be better off putting less troops in, but Cordoba has such a big force that I'm like, well, and I hope somebody's got nasty cards left to impact him, because otherwise, and I know they do, there's at least one cannibalism card. That leaves me only with Pizarro, who's sitting with, what, 130 something, but again, that's 70 short. That puts him not far, in about the same range as these guys. 10 more gold for Pizarro and a check for turn end. Not yet. So yeah, Cordoba has a shot here. He's at 107. He's got 96. So with a decent gold roll on here, I might be able to cash in and win. But bad stuff's going to happen first. However, I am going to break again. Possible we may not end this turn either, in which case I have to load this one up. First 3, Narvaez. Somebody looked back at my old Kingmaker videos. I have people look back at the old stuff all the time. But I added a few comments on BGG, and one of them was like, why are you calling them acorn and log and whatnot? The same reason that this is like white, the players are a color base. It's especially important, though, in Kingmaker, because no particular character is the faction. You don't even have something like the protection you have in Republic of Rome. Anyway. Narvaez, I don't know what he did. I think he moved off the plundered out there. I can't remember what happens. This is the problem with the interactive games. If I try to step away a little bit, just in terms of like I take an action, take another action, I lose track of what's going on. Green here, who is Almagro, taking the chance, moving into the rainforest. Ooh, that requires a morale check that I failed to make, or forgot to make. I don't know what this is. This is not a starvation roll. It's not a malaria roll, I think. I think it's just a being in that crap, so he takes a morale hit for that. This is the problem, making these deep inroads. You have to, there's a cost to trying to do them. Now, you know, there's potential high victory, but the ones over here were just so easy comparatively that they felt more appealing, and this one doesn't look bad either, with only one R. And then the third player was Balboa over here, who did a diplomacy which failed. Somebody played a nasty on him, nothing too big, but he did and generated some troops for Cordoba to deal with, which means Cordoba is not going to get another plunder this turn. Well, this impulse, right? The turn could go on further, but we're at the 2 to 7 point. He didn't have enough cash to work over, and Balboa's loss from being driven out of a city was catastrophic, really. So, oh yeah. Also, I haven't been playing much. It's not just Raid, although there was a clan fight in Raid that ate up a lot of time, but it's also this damn speaker runoff or whatever. To me, that's the side of politics that I love. It's sort of like this game and, you know, horse trading and everything, and people getting into positions where, well, I will accept anyone except McCarthy, you know. It's a part of political type games that I've enjoyed, and things that aren't really games but feel kind of like live action games. Things like Student Government felt that way. Not real student government, the mock government stuff. I never did the real stuff. Always. Didn't seem as fun. That was just a popularity contest. But also some of the political games that I enjoy. Anyway, I guess I finish up the last couple of these. Right, Cordoba decided to stay and fight, and there was actually a bunch of nastiness to face him. Pits, human sacrifice, cut saddle straps, encirclement. The cut saddle straps took one of his horses out of play for the battle, but he actually took no losses, just a morale hit for the human sacrifice. And he had a betrayal, so he gets to pull some of this. And wiped out the forces. There was no death on his side. So that actually worked out pretty well, but I'm still, you know, facing, hey, I'm near the end of a turn, and 100 points is, just as before, not quite enough to get me over. Yeah, it's a little more than 100, but it's also, I'm 20% down from the king's share and whatnot. So I have to get a big pile of gold, and I was hoping to be able to plunder once more before that. Again, I think it's going to go another turn just because of that. But it all depends on what happens here. And Pizarro is, I don't know what he's doing. He's been doing diplomacy, which isn't the best thing in the world, to tell you the truth. And he got a good set of rolls. I don't know why I did it. I did it probably because I didn't notice this was an imperial city. It would have made more sense for me to go somewhere else. I got a really good roll, and it would have turned it into an allied city, which would be useful. I'd get troops and everything. But now, end of turn check, 2 through 7. Hey, we get another turn. That gives a chance for this to end. A chance. Primarily on Cordoba's side. Nobody can Mano de Dios this, so on for another set of player turns. Did a diplomacy roll, didn't get the food that he needs, so he's possibly suffering starvation. Almagro made it to look for Prester John. Almost. Got a 10. Now I have a Mano de Dios, but I don't want to waste it on, hey, maybe I'll get an 11 or 12, which is better. So I actually get 5 victory points for this. This is the green player. Because H, expedition discovers a lake with a small quantity of gold artifacts. Remove marker permanently from play. You know, not what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for the big 60, but something's better than nothing. 5 victory points, though, man. I'd certainly not have. I certainly could do better just pillaging cities and not worrying about empires and whatnot than chasing after stuff like that. But I needed the big victory point modifier to start getting me into ranges where other people were. Although I really can't win anyway. Some of it's just the glory of it all. Next impulse. Let's see. Trying to remember what I did. Nevaez did failed diplomacy again. We did Almagro. Yeah, we got up to there. Balboa did another diplomacy. Didn't get much, if anything. I don't know. I don't see. I see a food. So, oh no, he did a rally. Sorry, he did a rally. Got rid of his thingamabobby. Cordoba did a plunder. And honestly, I think I left a plunder marker. I didn't add a plunder marker. Didn't get a lot. Got like $12. Not enough to end the game here. And, it's kind of like, I gotta keep plundering because maybe I'll have enough that I can turn in. But 12s aren't going to do it, and the plunder table is just... as you start accumulating minuses on it. So I've got the Imperial City at +1. It is an Imperial City, but, I'm looking at maybe 25 or so. That might be enough on a good roll to be able to do it, but that good roll is getting further and further away as those modifiers go away. I think I did flip it correctly. Okay. And Pizarro finally, another diplomacy, and he got like 2 gold out of it this time. Worse, I've been adding to his food. He can only carry 3. He doesn't have the bearers. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I probably might even be better off, let's see, at a -2 on here. It looks like I'm running close to what a town could give me, but a town isn't going to give me much either. And then moving back and going to this city or something isn't terribly helpful either. Because, it would help me if I wanted to attack this, whatever. Anyway, that gets me a 2 through 9, so the turn is almost certain going to end here. And indeed it does. Now we have some checks to make. I feel like an idiot, and this is part because I'm walking away. Using Cordoba there when I had Candia over here, who could have been exploring further and is actually going to have to make a morale check. Yeah, because he's got no food. Situation for Sandoval here. Again, Pizarro didn't have to be continuing to roll, but I forget walking away and being away for so long, the sort of, hey, do you want to move your other thing? What's it up to? I've gotten so used to in previous turns of the game, everybody being kind of, they're just spares, man. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Because it's very hard to operate 2 expeditions at the same time. And one of them is good at making money and whatnot. But, when you're getting 2 gold per turn, that's not worth it anymore. And, when you're looking at, hey, Sandoval is sitting in a mosquito swamp, that ain't great at all. But that's life. This one's going up. The less and less I become, the more I become detached from the game and stop caring about it and wandering away, the more mistakes I make and the longer the damn thing is going to drag out. But, it's just not doing it for me.